I want to talk a little bit about Proto-Indo-European linguistics, language trees, language families, the way that things change over time, the way that things diverge. We can talk about religion maybe a little bit later on. We can talk about some history. Someone gave me an idea for a really neat way that we could recap a bunch of history all at once in a progressive thing. I'm not sure that we'd get it all done in one day because it's a lot of content if we're talking about all of history to try to get through. But I want to do that. If you guys want to do that with me, I'd love to hear about that, and I'll do it if you guys want me to, I guess. Sleepy Reapy, what's up, my buddy? I like your emote. That's a frog of some sort. Anywho, I got this and that I'm going to try to do. We're going to look at some linguistic stuff today. I got the impression from my last video and my last expedition before that, there was people that had various questions about how I do things, where I've been, what I've done, how I got there. If I can help you guys with any information, if you guys have any questions, I want to answer your questions. I want to, explain all this stuff to you. Not that I actually know anything, but I can definitely tell you about what I did and why I did it. And if you have something that you want to do, you tell me what it is that you want to do, and I'll try to see if I can figure out a way that we can make it happen for you, if you know what I'm saying. Anyway, if you want to do that, hop into my Discord. Let me see if I can drop one of these. Nope, that didn't work. Let me go get a Discord link for you first real quick. And I will drop the link out there for you guys. Boop, boop, and boop. Hop into the Discord, come and see me if you guys want to ask some questions, get on the stream, do a live chat if you got some real advice that you need. If you got a simple frickin' one-liner, throw it in the chat. The likelihood of me actually understanding what you're asking, moderate at best, but we'll see. I did have a couple people come and chat with me after the show last night, and we talked about some things in the Discord, but it was only so productive. We only got so far, but sometimes I'm in there and sometimes we could talk about stuff. But I'd much rather answer questions here. That way I can say it out loud to all of you guys all at once. And then, we can, I don't know, everybody can hear it. I don't have to say it a million to billion times. Anyway, let me get this guy pulled up here and let me show it to you here. That one. Ha-ha! I'm over here in the corner now. That thing's up there in that corner over there. We've got it all. So, what I've got here on the screen, this is an illustration of, oh, you guys can't see it yet, can you? There you go. Now it's there. Ha-ha. Okay, so we've got an illustration here of a nice way to think about the language tree. Now, you'll see that on the ends of all of the branches, this kind of works like a family tree with, I guess I can show you a family tree, and we'll kind of discuss that real quick. So when we have a family tree, we usually start out with something like this. You have a parent, and then they come together. We have a divergence, and then we produce the individual offspring, and then they diverge, and we have each of these little branches that we're going to see as we go down the chain. So it splits apart, it comes back together, it splits apart again, it comes down again, it splits apart, and then there's no extension from this individual. They obviously didn't get married, didn't have children. These people, however, they had multiple children, and then these things split apart and they diverge to the point that we can look at this and go, these people are all siblings, this person is a cousin, this person is their second aunt, and each one of these things have different names. Each one of these things, has a different relationship to one another. But originally, they're all going to link back to this original common shared ancestor, or everybody on this side is going to link back to these shared common ancestors, and it kind of goes down like this. when we talk about like evolution, when we talk about the evolution of languages, the evolution of species, the advancement of ideas or societies, we tend to follow like similar trees like this. You can map most things as they pass through time onto things like this. They get influenced by outside forces. It's not so easy as going, hey, there's this person that came out of nowhere and married into this family and then generates the family tree. And you'll also notice that there is no backlog of family tree up above this person showing where they came from and all the other information. So this family tree, these family trees do tend to be kind of limited. And so the same kind of thing is going to occur with a language family tree. So on this language family tree, down at the very bottom of it, this is kind of upside down compared to the other family tree. But again, if we look at this and you imagine if we flip this upside down, the trunk would be down here and then all of the branches and the leaves would be up here. That's probably how family trees should look, but we draw them upside down like family pyramids for some reason. Anyway, here's our actual picture again. This is our Proto-Indo-European family tree. We're going to zoom in here a little bit. We'll get down here at the bottom. You can see we have Indo-European on one side, and over here we have the Uralic languages. The Uralic languages are the furthest distant related to any of these other ones. Down here at the original branch, they branch off away from Proto-Indo-European all the way back at the original thing. What we're trying to point out here, essentially, is that Proto-Indo-European is a huge complex language tree that has a vast variety of languages that are all related back to it. We have English, we have German, you have Spanish, you have Russian, you have Hindi, Bengali, Punjabi, Persian, Kurdish, Iranian, like so many different languages all link back to Proto-Indo-European. Proto meaning ancient, Indo as in like from the Indian subcontinent, and European as in all of Europe. Now, the Uralic languages, if we look at them over here, they are not related to the Proto-Indo-European languages. That's where they first diverged. Proto-Indo-European went one way and Uralic went the other way. The Uralic languages are like Finnic, Urugal, Finnish, Hungarian, Estonian, Mari, Komi, Udrumotu. These are all up here. Up in this general area. They're up in Russia, they're in Finland, they're in Iceland. These are your Uralic languages. We're talking about they're kind of like Germanic languages, but Germanic languages were influenced by Uralic languages. That's why they're different than other Proto-European languages, but the foundation of Germanic languages is still the Proto-European language. It's just had influences from it. Kind of like how Texas isn't a Mexican state, it just has Mexican influences that affect the culture of that state and give it their cowboy hat, salsa-eating vibe that they have in Texas. Anyway, so Proto-Indo-European is this one big tree. Uralic is another tree. You will notice, however, that like we're only talking about India and Europe. We are not mentioning any African languages at all in this tree because like they're split off from Uralic, African languages split off from Proto-European, Proto-Indo-European long ago, and there isn't as much information about them because there aren't as many writings that have survived into modern era, so there is not as much material for people to be able to study. Now, a lot of this is because a lot of these cultures didn't keep like litigious written records the way that certain other cultures have adopted and adapted and made more common. In the Americas, similar things have occurred. There are various cultures there that did writing and they wrote it on stone, and we still have those stone writings because they existed. But then there are, like in the Incan Empire, they used quipus, which are a series of ropes that they tied knots in to keep records and to tell stories, and knots and ropes being biodegradable natural materials, they tend to degrade over time. So a lot of these histories tend to be lost to us if we even know how to read them at all. And in order to read these things, often we need like a translation guide or like a Rosetta Stone or something like that to try to explain how we understand these things. Matter of fact, that's another good point. We'll probably have to talk about what the Rosetta Stone is at some point. Let's bring that guy up. Yeah, I'm not talking about the software, guys. We're talking about the Rosetta Stone. There it is. It's beautiful. Let's open it as a new image. Let's look at just it, and we're going to zoom in on it. Now, hey, how we doing, Roman Master Jedi? True, but can't remember the Rosetta Stone much. Yes, so if we look at the Rosetta Stone, you look at it up at the top. I don't know if you can see, these are hieroglyphics. So this is ancient Egyptian text. Now if we come down a little bit further, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that this is in Hebrew or Aramaic. This is some sort of a Semitic dialect or language. And then down at the very bottom, I think that we have either Phoenician or Greek. I can't recall. But the important thing about this particular stone is that it's the same story 3 times in 3 different languages. So immediately we were like, this is how we were able to decipher what hieroglyphics meant, because we could translate the other 2 languages on the stone, and now we all of a sudden had a guide to all of these other words on the Rosetta Stone to be like, oh, okay, I know what they're talking about when they say this symbol, this is what they mean. And so this, combined with other works and other things, this is how we translate languages. When a language is lost forever and nobody's ever been able to speak it before, we come across some kind of a Rosetta Stone like this. We translate the language, we play a little decoding game, and then a bunch of linguists sit down and go, oh, okay, wait, we've discovered the way that they pronounce their consonants based upon this, and now pretty soon we're reading and writing in languages that people haven't spoken in thousands of years. I have never seen the Rosetta Stone personally. I mean, I've seen pictures of it. I'm not the type of person that I feel like I ever need to actually see an artifact in person. I'm not the best analyst of artifacts. There are other people that are very studious that will sit there and find every intricate detail on these things and then write detailed papers and then bring up different references to what these things are about. And I'm not afraid to defer to their better judgment and to trust what they know and what they found about these things. And again, I can look at this stone and I know how and why and what they were able to learn from it. When I was studying this stone, you can get ultra high resolution images of this from the museums that are holding these things, and you can zoom in up on them almost to the microscopic level. I've known people that have gone, hey, there looks like there's a chip based on this image. I'd like to come to the museum and I'd like to personally examine this with a microscope, and I want to see if we've mistranslated this letter because there's been erosion and we're no longer seeing the T at the top of the T and we're thinking that it's an L, or maybe the T at the top of the L is scratched in after the fact and we've mistranslated this word for years. Where is the Rosetta Stone? I'm not sure where it is at the moment. Let's see here. I'll bet you that it's in England. If I had to guess, they tend to have all of the best stuff. Where is our friend the Rosetta Stone? It's in the British Museum. That's usually where all of the best stuff is. The English kind of invented the modern concept of archaeology internationally and obtained most of the things. Napoleon did a lot of artifact collecting as well during his day, and that's why France has so many artifacts as well. Is it back in Cairo now? Yeah, it's currently in the British Museum in London. It was dug out of, I don't think that it was actually Cairo. I think it was in the Valley of the Dead. I don't, no, we're not talking about that Rosetta Stone. They discovered the Rosetta Stone in 1799, digging foundations for an additional fort near the town of Rashid in the Nile Delta. It was part of a very old wall. And again, it's a placard. It kind of just tells the story of this area. It's not really saying anything important. The only important thing about it is that it's in 3 different languages, and therefore we were able to translate so many things from it. It's a very, very interesting, very important find to linguistics. And And again, that's the only way that we can recover any of these ancient languages. So I was talking about the sub-Saharan African languages and how they're not going to be represented on this particular tree because we don't necessarily know very much about those languages. The other languages that we don't know a whole ton about and where they come from, or at least how they're linked back to these languages, are indigenous American languages. Oh my gosh, and my mind is going to entirely blank on all of the language names now. But we have like the Inuit languages, we have the First Nations languages, we have the Navajo tongues, we have... I cannot for the life of me recall what the Aztec languages are called at the moment. Like, this is what I studied in school and my mind is blanking. Nahuatl, my goodness. So Nahuatl, the Nahuatl languages are not on this, which is what all of like the Pacific Southwest Native Americans spoke. Everybody in Central and Mesoamerica spoke this. In like further south in South America, we had the Incan Empire, and they spoke the Incan languages. There was a wide variety, but there is a split between the two. There are things called diasporic languages. Language diaspora map. Balkans. Loop. Okay, so we have this map here. These are language diasporas. You'll see like this blue group speaks all of the same language as the people in this blue group here, but you can see that this brown group has come in, or this like maroon group came in. They conquered the majority of the area, but the people that lived up here on this mountain or in this valley or in this city retained their cultural connection to this other area, probably because the culture has not yet entered this area and influenced them to change their situation. Same thing, we have these little pink dots inside of this deep blue area. So obviously these pink languages were here first. This blue language came in and subsumed the rest of them, has divided them in different spots, but left isolated groups still speaking this old language. These are called language diasporas, and languages like this can like get abandoned, so to speak. So if the blue language and the purple language and the green language are related, and this pink language is related to this pink language, but this pink language gets wiped out and this pink language gets wiped out, and then something else comes along and these two merge together and form a new language, we can get an isolated language in this pink one that gets left behind by thousands of years, and these are called language isolates. What do you mean, Mystical Ninja? I'm not sure which part you mean. But yeah, diasporic or language isolates. Let's see here. So again, the reason that I mention all of this is because this tree really isn't talking about all of the languages. It's talking about the largest and most well-documented language tree that we have. I mean, there are a lot of the most commonly spoken languages in the world on this, but by no means all of the language, just the languages spoken by most peoples. So obviously we have English, we have French, we have Italian, Portuguese, and Spanish. Let's start down here at the bottom though. We already kind of talked about Uralic languages and how they broke off. Let's look at the Proto-Indo-European languages. It breaks off down here at the beginning into Indo-Iranian and European. Indo-Iranian also obviously gets into the Indic languages and the Iranian languages. The Iranian languages being Persian, Kurdish, Pashto, all of these languages that were spoken essentially by the Persian Empire for thousands of years. The Indic languages, Punjabi, Bengali, Hindi, obviously all of the myriad of languages spoken in India. People discount constantly how many different languages have been spoken in India and are still spoken in India today. The national language in India is English because all of the provinces speak different languages, and it was easier to teach everybody to speak English than it was to try to teach everybody to speak one of the other individual languages, because it would have meant that that individual language had supremacy over all of the other individual languages, and it was easier to teach all of the different groups, different, I don't want to call them tribes, but like cultures, to speak a shared foreign language than it was for all of them to agree that any one of their own languages was superior enough that it should be accepted across the board by everyone. All right, I got this other map. This one just looks at Proto-Indo-European. This is a little bit more in-depth and detailed. I also have this one, which frankly, I don't even like looking at it myself. The nice thing about it is that we've got split-offs on dates and how long ago things seem to have occurred and things seem to have split off, which is very, very, very nice. So we'll go back to here for a moment. And I think we're actually going to have to start bouncing back and forth between these two maps periodically, so bear with me if we have to do that. But Proto-Indo-European, we are talking like ancient times. If we look through here, italic, Hellenic leads to the classical Greeks, leads to the Greeks. So before we had the Greeks, before we had Alexander the Great, before we had Plato, they were speaking Proto-Indo-European. This is like hunter-gatherer language. This is the language that like the first bartering, the first commerce was occurring in ancient times, when people first like abandoned the hunter-gatherer lifestyle and first adopted agriculture and a more sedentary lifestyle. It split off, depending on different regions, into Germanic tribes, Albanian tribes, again, the Hellenic tribes, which became the Greeks, the Italic tribes, which became Latin, which is the Roman language, the Indo-Iranian languages, which again we talked about were the Indic languages like Sanskrit versus the Iranian languages like that spoken in the Persian Empire. Again, these things happened much later in time. We have the Celtic languages like Irish, Scottish, Welsh, so on and so forth. The Armenian languages, which were relatively isolated. They don't get influenced by very much, and you see they diverged very long ago. And then the Balto-Slavic languages, which are all of the Balkan languages, your Slavic languages, your Russians, all of your things like this. So all of these languages, as they come down, they start at this original thing, so you will have some mutual intelligibility between the ancient Italic, Hellenic, Albanian, Germanic, Indo-Iranian, Celtic, Armenian, or the Balto-Slavic languages. There's going to be certain words that can get transferred back and forth, the same way that you might in one of these other Romance languages that we see down here, like French, Spanish, and Portuguese. All of these words tend to share languages because they're all linked back to the original Gaelic tongues, which are based on the original Latin tongues. And so it's all kind of the same thing, but then they skid apart and they're all different, but they stay similar because they were all originally related. It kind of bounces back and forth. Yeah, they do some kind of interesting things with language. Language moves around, languages change over time. Again, Proto-Indo-European started back 8,700 years ago. We're talking 6,000 years ago that these languages, we're talking 6,700 BC is when these languages first started splitting apart. I mean, granted, the Egyptian languages, hieroglyphics, ancient Egyptian, we have concepts as to what these languages may have been back then, but again, all of these tongues are lost to us because we lost all of the writing, all of the original teachings, and at the Bronze Age collapse, which I haven't talked about very much, the Bronze Age collapse, all of the great empires of the ancient world were all attacked, like simultaneously, by a bunch of different individual tribes of people. We're not sure where these people came from exactly. They're often referred to in historical writings of the time as sea people, because apparently they often came on boats, or they were viewed as being from somewhere else. But again, if we look, they seem to have come from elsewhere. They seem to have come generally from north down into south, or potentially from the islands and spread out from the islands. They attacked everywhere along this coast. They attacked everywhere along northern Africa. There are reports of them attacking throughout Europe and through the upper Mediterranean. But they do seem to have come from the Mediterranean somewhere, or north in the Mediterranean. They spread death and destruction all over the place, and all of the ancient civilizations collapsed. Canaan collapsed, Egypt collapsed, Mycenae collapsed, everywhere. And it took civilizations hundreds of years after the Bronze Age collapse for them to rebuild again. We lost a lot of technology at that time. We lost a lot of science, and we lost a lot of learning at that time. There are talks of, well, this is where the ancient aliens were, and I'm seeing some people, we've got mysterious sea people like mermaids in Atlantis and stuff like that. There have been theories that, yeah, there's some place where all of these people came from and they had better technology. And this is kind of given credence because this occurred at the end of the Bronze Age, the beginning of the Iron Age, and there's ingredients for forging bronze that are hard to come by that these people had a whole boatload of. And they're like, well, where on earth did they get all of the tin to make the bronze? Because there are no tin mines in the ancient world. They seem to come from England, which was way too far away for people to have been bringing tin all the way down to the old ancient world. And there's not records of that many people being up near the tin mines and trading to get things down that far. So there's confusion as to where these sea peoples came from. The theory that I float on as of right now is that there was rolling famines that were occurring across the old world. Places like that existed in Italy, in Greece, in Europe, the cities were starting to collapse. Kingdoms were starting to fail. There were famines. People were starving. People began rioting. The cities burned down. There was no material in the city. There was no food. After everything was gone, people formed like raiding bands, bandit groups, and would go to the next cities and sacked those cities, and now there's riots in the cities because there's no food. And then the chaos kept rolling, and essentially it was a giant revolution. They did the anarcho-primitivism thing, and they bombed themselves back to pre-technology. There wasn't much technology at the time, so they didn't have nuclear weapons to do it with, but they totally primitivized themselves. They went back to like hunter-gatherer raider form, and then they formed new civilizations. Versus... I don't know how to spell, so let's see if I get what I'm looking for here. So if we look at this pot, there is ornate decoration on it. This pot also, we have some ornate decoration on it. Ancient Greek vases were known for their very detailed paintings and very detailed artworks. All pre-Bronze Age collapse civilizations were known for putting a lot of time and detail and artwork into their pottery, into their flatware, into their cups and their bowls. After the Bronze Age collapse, we start seeing much plainer vessels. We start seeing things that were made for functionality with a lot less attention put onto aesthetic value. Without as much aesthetic value being put onto these different things, like there was this general sense of equality. There's a theory that this is when the kingdom of Israel was first founded. The stories of the Old Testament were first written down into book and scroll form. And these new kingdoms were established post Bronze Age collapse. These pots, these things like that, the attention to ornamentation, the attention to making things look pretty was not as much anymore. It was actually viewed as being opulent and being like excessive if you had too shiny of a pot. If you painted your walls too much, you obviously had too much time and money on your hands, and you didn't deserve all of this, and you should be dragged down like the old kings who brought us to ruin before. And then again, after years and years and years, civilization eventually built itself back up, caught back up to where they were, and they realized that their new priests were just as bad as their old kings, and their old kings were just as bad, or their old priests were just as bad as their new kings, and we were just changing one name for another. Couldn't have just been a plague or something that caused it? No, there's actual written records of fighting and like warriors coming, and there's talks about like these peoples being held up in their castles, in their fortifications, inside of their cities, behind the walls, and being sieged by these people. And whenever people describe their enemies, they always describe them as being bloodthirsty and ravenous and being brutish and looking frightening and looking gaunt and all of these terrible things, but they don't have very much actual information about them in there, except for how scary they are, how they won't go away, how they keep coming back. Sometimes they talk about how dumb they are. I know that the Egyptians actually have a written story where they talk about defeating the sea people and pushing them away, but we also know that 40 years later they came back and they defeated that same civilization in Egypt. So again, this is something that went on for a couple of hundred years with these roving, raiding bandit groups that were pretty uniformly called the same thing everywhere: sea peoples, or people from the sea, or people from the water, or water people, or boat folk, or however you want to translate the word, because none of these things were said in English back then.
Still not following.
Hey, what's up, Deer Hunter Buck? Good to see you, bud. But yeah, no, they kind of brought us all back to this primitive style civilization and this value away from opulence and away from like building fancy, big, beautiful houses. They quit building palaces and pyramids and temples for a few hundred years after that. And then, you know, slowly but surely, culture started to catch back up. They started rebuilding the social hierarchy again. Things started getting more complicated again. It started piling up more and more. And eventually we were back to Persian empires and Roman empires and Greek empires, and we were all conquering each other again. But this is where, like, when they point out how long in between, like, Cleopatra and the creation of the pyramids, did you guys know that if you look at the dates, Cleopatra is more closely, like closer to the time today, like the time of her death is closer to today than to the time of the pyramids. I think we're looking at something like 3,000 years ago Cleopatra died, and then like 10,000 years ago the pyramids died. So it's 3,000 years to one and 7,000 years to the other. Big difference. Yeah, well, again, caused by the sea peoples, and nobody knows who they are. I kind of just think that they were raiders from the next kingdom over. It's like a bunch of anarchists, so to speak, or hungry bandits, or raiders. Like, I don't think that they were some nation of ethnically diverse people coming from an outside area and coming in. I don't think that they were aliens, or from Atlantis, or, you know, Native Americans on giant ocean-faring canoes. I've heard all kinds of crazy, like suggestions. There's this thing called the Antikythera machine, Antikythera engine. Yeah, this thing. They dug this thing up. It's 2,000 years old. We're talking, well, it's probably older than that from what I understand. But this is like a pre-Bronze Age or pre-Iron Age device made entirely out of bronze that had complex inner workings and gears inside of it. Scientists still today have no idea what it was used for precisely. They've done reproductions of it. We've x-rayed it countless times to try to figure out what the insides look like. People have built various reproductions of this thing, and the best that they can tell is that it monitors the locations of various planets, like in their trajectory through space, but these people weren't aware of some of the planets that are referenced on it yet. But it seems to accurately predict where the planets are going to be and what they're doing. And again, Bronze Age collapse was a heck of a thing because nobody talked about any of these things. The thing was discovered on a sunken ship in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, or in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea. There's someone actually holding it in their dadgum hands. You're a frickin' monster. Put it down and put it back in the hermetically sealed case. My children need to be able to see this thing, as if I'm going to have children, for gosh sakes. But anyway, yeah, they found this thing. They've done a bunch of x-rays on it to try to figure out what the heck it is. The best that they can figure out is that it probably looked something like this originally. They've recreated different parts using different gears and the different ratios to try to guess what it is, but they have no idea what they were. Well, and it's very much pre-Viking age, Dr. Entropi. Vikings wouldn't exist for another 3,000 years, 2,000 years at the time. When was the Bronze Age collapse? Let's get an exact date for you. (1200 to 1150 BC). So, I mean, we're talking 3,000 years ago. And Vikings... Viking Age, 700 to 1000. So there's a 2,000 year gap, 1,500 year gap between the Bronze Age collapse and the Vikings. But yeah, it is helpful to think of them kind of like a group of Vikings. And I personally, in my opinion, think that they were a multicultural, multi-ethnic, diverse group. I think that Sea Peoples was a misnomer for angry people, angry foreigners coming to the border to demand food. I think that they were refugees, but they were refugees with swords. Because if you don't give refugees food, they pull your walls down and they take the food. That's how these things work. It does look alien. I don't disagree. The Antikytherium engine looks a little bit strange. People think that it's a little bit strange. It's a little bit strange that it knows so much about space and about all of these other things and what the heck is it for and what was it for. But you got to be careful not to fall in the conspiracy theory trap. Aliens, guys, really? What would they be doing here? Why would they want to help us? I mean... Don't you think that they'd be making a Twitch channel and trying to explain this stuff to you if they were among you? Maybe showing you pictures of the devices that they had brought you and telling you about all the cool things that they had done before? Maybe talking about how evolution is real and how languages are all like this thing and telling you all that you ought to be nice to each other. But I swear to God, I'm not an alien. And I'm not here to tell you how things work or anything like that. Ask CuteBot. She knows all about it. I told her all about it the other day. Anyway, language trees, man. Language trees. We're talking about linguistics. We're talking about language trees. We were talking about cultures. We were talking about the way that things collapsed and the way that things fell apart. See, you had the Bronze Age collapse. We had new civilizations develop. We had the concept of monotheism. Monotheism spread around the world. The idea caught on like wildfire and went frickin' everywhere. When monotheism being the big thing, it supplanted polytheism. That's a lot of when the Roman Empire was collapsing, they had a polytheistic view of deities. They had a whole bunch of, there was Pluto and Jupiter and Neptune, and all of the planet names are all the names of all of their gods, and each of their gods had a different divinity. And then the concept of monotheism after the death of Christ spread through the Roman Empire, and everybody slowly converted from being polytheistic to being monotheistic. And then monotheism got pushed into the Germanic tribes and all of the Norse religions and all the pagan religions. They all dropped their polytheistic deity views. They adopted monotheism. The only religion out there still in the world, technically, that like still applies polytheism to their view are like the Hindu religions, and technically you might say some of the other Asian religions, but generally speaking, most people have figured out the monotheism trick about grouping all of the powers of the divine into one single entity to kind of be like, here, this is our origin story. And then these origin stories like get handed around and get passed down. Like, sorry, I got baffled. I'm on a little trail. Let me roll this back. And I'll hold that for a second. Let me see what we got here. Hey, Wick's here again. Do I know any languages other than English? Hell of a fanboy. Hell of a boy. Hell of a boy. You know, I've been all over the world. Hell of a boy. I've spoken a multitude of different languages at different times. I used to speak Korean pretty well. I used to speak Japanese pretty well. I used to speak Spanish a whole lot better than I do now. I speak English the most competently out of any language. I still don't think that I speak English super competently, but it is the only language that I feel comfortable enough trying to fully express my ideas in because it's the one that I'm most capable in. Now, if you were to speak to me in Spanish, I'm sure that I could understand what you were trying to say to me, and then I would be able to communicate with you in a way that you would be able to understand me. When we start getting into Mandarin, I am a little bit less likely to be able to understand what you're trying to say to me, infer what you're trying to say to me, and I'm going to have more of a hard time trying to communicate with you. Thank goodness English is so widely known and accepted, so I haven't had too much trouble getting around, but I do try to learn the languages of the cultures or of the peoples that I'm interacting with to better be able to express myself. I do not speak Danish. Danish is such a frightening language, I do not even want to try. I know how to say æbelskivers because I know that I like æbelskivers, but I don't know. No, I like Danish cabbage. The pickled sauerkraut, that's some good stuff. Readopted polytheism in modern times. This is very true. Polytheism is on the rise again. Deities are being shattered, scatified into a bunch of different things. There's this really good book called American Gods that describes like kind of the way that this is sort of happening, and I think that it's a really neat analogy or illustration of modern society. First time chatter, Tenflix. What's up, Tenflix? Thanks for coming by. Frickin' whole flock's here. I like the flock, man. æbelskivers. Yeah, man. I like those. They're delicious. You got to have the right kind of jam. If you have an alalaberry jam for your æbelskivers, you guys ever had an alalaberry? Man, oh man, alalaberries. Bam. Images of alalaberries. They're kind of like a cross between a raspberry and a blueberry. They taste very unique, and I actually think that they have some strawberry genetics in them as well. They do not taste like anything else in the world, no matter what they look like. You can only get them in certain parts of the world at certain seasons, and if you can get a hold of them, get a hold of them. Danish women are hot. Can't disagree with that. Brombeer? Brombeer. I don't know if they're local to Scandinavia or not. I know of a little Danish community in California where they do grow these berries, and they put them on their æbelskivers there, and I tell you what, that's a good place. That's a good food. Back to the language tree though, man. Man-oh, man-oh. Wait a minute, we talked about all this. I don't have anything else to say about the language tree. It's a silly thing. We had gotten onto religion, we had gotten onto collapses of civilizations, we'd gotten onto polytheism and monotheism. Then we had like this thing that happened within the Catholic Church where you had the divergence of the Orthodox Church, and then you had the Catholic Church. The Orthodox Church remained in Greece. You had the Catholic Church that was in Rome. The Roman Church dominated all of Europe. The Orthodox Church kind of stayed in the Mediterranean, interacted primarily with the Middle East, and then went up to Russia and created the Russian Orthodox Church, which is derived from the Greek Orthodox Church. All of the other churches in Europe did the whole Martin Luther thing and had the Protestant Reformation and busted themselves all up. The Church of England became a thing when Henry VIII wanted to create his own church in England, but he retained absolute authority and control over the church and made it a state organization that was the church. We had the Pilgrims and the split off from that because people wanted to do their own unique thing even further. And then in later years, we've had all of these new modern sects within Christianity, like your LDS, your Jehovah's Witnesses, your Seventh-day Adventists, Methodists and Baptists and Quakers and Protestants and Shakers and all of these different unique variations off of the original concept. But again, the kind of split that has occurred within Christianity has been to separate from the authority figures in Rome or in Greece and to instead make each individual person like their own authority upon their own religion. And having this own authority over one's own religion has given the people the power to choose how they want to believe and what exactly they want to believe and how they're going to interact with their beliefs. And so there's a lot of people that say, well, I think that we should do presents on January 6th because that's when the wise men actually showed up. And there's a lot of people that say, well, we should do them on Christmas Day because that's when Jesus was born. And then there's a lot of people that say, well, we should do them on Christmas Eve as long as it's after midnight because that's when Santa Claus shows up. And there's so many different ways that people like to interact with their cultures and with their religions that we can't really say that anybody is ever right or wrong. Let me see. I'm sorry. I lost track here for a second. Are these local to Scandinavia? We just had some tonight. We call them blackberries. They're different than blackberries, Roman Demaster. These are lullaberries. They are distinctive. Currants are another one. I really do like currants. They grow wild where I grew up. They grow wild here too, in Ontario. Christmas literally came from the pagan Yule, which is the winter solstice. I don't disagree. People have been celebrating holidays on December 25th for since the dawn of time because the solstice is a very important thing when you're farming. And it's really interesting how Mithra was also born on the same day as Jesus, but has nothing to do with Christianity. And it's strange how all of these stories have little crosses over here and there, because really we're not telling you the story of how God created the world. We're telling you the story of how the universe came to be. And whatever story you believe that is your origin story, that you can go, well, I know how everything happened. I know how I got here. My daddy told me. That's what they're trying to sell you. They just are trying to sell you a story that you can understand and that you can believe. That's why I'm here. That's what I want to find out from you guys. I want to find out about the origin story that you understand. I know the real origin story. I know where we all came from, and I know how we all got here. I know why Christianity is a thing, and I know why they wrote the Constitution. I know why the Revolutionary War was fought, and I know why the Pilgrims came across from England on the boats. I know all of the different silly little things, but only from my perspective. None of the things that I say are true or right, except that I've studied them and I know what I understand. If any of you folks have something that you understand better than me, I'd love to hear about it. I want to invite you onto the channel to go, excuse me, somebody, you said some wrong things in the last stream, and I wanted to point out where you were wrong. Again, I want to invite you guys on. I want to let you guys tell me, hey, I think you're full of shit. I don't think that any of this is true. I need to point out that you're being dumb. I wanted to come on here and I wanted to ask the audience, hey, if you guys want to come and call me out on any of my stuff today, please do that. Please hop in my Discord. Please hop in my chat. Tell me I'm a big dummy and tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. I went back and I watched a couple of the videos that I did where I was talking with people over the weekend. And I noticed people in chat are like, hey, I don't believe this guy. Hey, I don't think this guy's for real. Hey, I've got a million different questions for this guy. A lot of people wanted me to take my hat off and show all of you guys my hair. But I don't know, man. If you guys have any questions, I want you all to come. I want you all to ask me. I want you to call me out on my bullshit. And if I can explain anything to you, I will. If I can help you to figure out anything that you're struggling with, I want to help. But again, I'm not a super smart guy. I don't really know anything, and I just want to learn more. We can Google stuff together. I mean, and if you guys don't like Google, we can use a different search engine. DuckDuckGo works really well too. I use them when I'm not streaming. Let's see here. No Turkish then. No, I'm afraid I don't know Turkish at all. I've known a few Turkish individuals. I have not gotten to go through Turkey yet. I would love to get to Turkey. I've had family that went to Istanbul. I want to go to Istanbul with a roadmap and ask people to help me to find Constantinople. That's one of my life's dreams. I rolled back too far. Dude says, I believe you. I don't know. I'm a scientist, so I'll understand that more. I believe you. People are such idiots. I don't disagree with that. You are believable. People are inherently jealous. Well, I appreciate all of this. You guys are all fantastic. I'm glad that you guys don't have any crazy weird questions for me. But again, I have my understanding of the way that the world came to be the way that it is today. I have my understandings of cultures, of histories, of the way that these societies and cultures have interacted. I have a very strong understanding of where we're at now. I have a pretty strong understanding of where we're going to be in the near future, I think. I'm not afraid of the future. I'm not afraid of where we're going. There's a lot of people out there today that are very frightened by the path and the direction that humanity is taking and the things that might happen to or with humanity in the future. And frankly, I don't think that everybody should be so afraid all the time. I think that it's not nearly as bad as what people seem to think that it is. Yeah. Your roots are in Rome. Had your DNA done recently. That is very fantastic. Rome was a very common place. A lot of people like to go back and forth, and if you could claim to be a Roman citizen, if you could marry into Roman families, you got additional rights for a very long time. After that, the Holy Roman Empire, based off of Charlemagne's lineage, was extremely powerful through Europe, like all the way up until like the 1700s, 1600s, when it finally came to an end. Oh, you're proper Roman. I guess that would explain the name. Are you from Italy? Oh man, were they in Italy during World War II? That's super interesting. That's super interesting. I would love to have you come on and talk about Roman culture and Roman heritage and what you know about Rome and what it means to you individually sometime. Just because so few people understand, and particularly so few people understand the difference between Roman, Italian, what it means to have like so many different independent states within your country, why Italy became unified into one country at one point, and like what their stage in the European Union is. Again, Roman, if you'd like to come on today and talk about that, I'd love to have you. I'm in my Discord, and I would love to have you as a guest if you want to come on. But I don't want to put any pressure on you to say that you should. But I do love hearing from other people and finding out about other people's perspectives. You're from Turkey? You're currently in Istanbul? Man, I am very curious about you too now, hell of a boy. I want to know what you do. I want to know where else you have been. I want to know what you look like. I want to know where you went to school. I want to know what you studied in school. I want to know what you want to do. Man, I'm so curious about you. Big question. First question, are you religious, and what religion do you practice, hell of a boy? That's where I want to go. Oh, awesome, Roman. I'm going to put everybody else on if you will, how's this? If you hop into the Discord, If you come down to the very bottom of my page and you go to join the show waiting room, if you sit in there for a second, I'll put everyone else on hold out here. I'll come and interview you. We'll chat for a little bit, and then I'll bring you on if that's cool with you. I appreciate that. You were over there at the CuteBot show. I liked the CuteBot show too. She's such a nice person. I was trying to hopefully interview her and find out more about her and how she came to be such a unique individual that she is, but she didn't give me an opportunity to ask her any questions. I think that I got that she was 24 out of her and that she was of Filipino descent. Other than that, I can't, oh, and I know that she lives in Austin. I inferred after the fact that she does have, I got information from her directly on the show that she does have a boyfriend that she lives with, but man, she's very good at obfuscating details. Oh, well, very valid, Roman. I wouldn't, again, want to put you on the spot, but if you do want to come on the show anytime, get yourself a halfway decent mic. I'll check with you. We'll make sure everything's good, but then I'd love to have you come on and we can talk about anything you want about Rome and Roman culture and your personal history and your family's history and your perspective on reality and how we got to where we are. I love it. I'm agnostic, but I used to be Muslim. She fakes a lot of her sexual stuff. I wouldn't doubt that. I wasn't completely buying the whole, she absolutely does not enjoy intimacy and that it always hurts her concept that she was playing with there, but she has to do her thing and she is a professional at what she does, and I'm sure she knows exactly what she's doing. Gee Willikers, what are your thoughts on Muslim people or Christian people? Hell of a boy, I want you to join my Discord also. I'd like to interview you. I'd like you to come on. I'd like to talk to you about who you are specifically. I have a friend of mine from, well, I'm not really gonna relay what country he's from, but I'm looking to have a conversation on stream with another one of my friends that's currently a practicing Muslim that I believe is post-gender at this point, but I need to confirm that. I don't want to put words in their mouth. But I believe that they're a doctor, or at least they play a doctor on television. But yes, they are Muslim. They come from outside of the United States, in that part of the world, maybe a little bit further south and east than yourself in Istanbul. But I'd like to have them come on. I'd like to talk to them about their unique perspectives and how they come to the conclusions that they have, which are so extremely unique for being where he is. Can you imagine being so progressive in a predominantly Muslim nation with an anti or a post-gender worldview? Man, oh man, mind-boggling, to say the least. Oh, well, hell of a boy, do you want to come on today and talk about Istanbul? Your perspective and what it means to have come from a society that has such a multi-religious background and then to have come through the other side into agnosticism, which I suppose agnosticism means that you kind of just shrug and go, I don't know, it is what it is. But then again, I've been accused of being an agnostic myself in the past, but I don't know if I buy it completely. Anywho, let's see. We talked about language isolates a little bit. We talked about the rise and fall of Rome. We talked a little bit about religions. We talked a little bit about what's going on in America today. I talked about a couple of conversations that I have. Born in Flint, Michigan. Do you still live in Flint, Michigan? Patasta kid? That would not be a wonderful place to be. Where do you get water? Because even the water filter machines aren't getting the water clean anymore. Man, oh man. Yeah, Istanbul. What a wonderful place to look at. Let's look at Istanbul for a second, guys. Man, oh man, would you look at that? The Hagia Sophia. Man, how pretty could you be? Look at all those lights on it and everything. Man, I understand why it's the center of the ancient world. Here, let's look at it on a map. This gives context to people. Okay? Istanbul is this city on this little river. And this little river divides the Black Sea, which is huge, and the Mediterranean Ocean. Mediterranean Sea. So if you're over here in the Southeast Asia, in Saudi Arabia, in the Middle East, and you're coming all the way west and you want to get into Europe, you're going to go through Turkey. You're going to go across this little land bridge. You're going to go through Istanbul. And then you enter Europe proper. Or you get a boat and you sail around in a boat and you come around that way. But Istanbul was viewed as the bridge between Europe and Asia. As soon as you crossed through Istanbul in the ancient world, you were in Asia. And as soon as you crossed through Istanbul, you were in Europe. And the words Europe, Africa, and Asia all kind of derive from this particular part of the world, because if you sit right here, this one was Europe, that one was Asia, and this one was Africa, and they just kind of expanded the borders out. Yes, the Bosphorus River. It's a very important river. It cuts the entire world in half. Oh man, I went to Denmark. I heard about Flint. No, Denver. In Colorado too. Didn't know about that. We could sail from there from Naples. Yes, the little river is called the Bosporus. Yes, 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 yes. But yeah, no, Istanbul, when the Roman Empire moved the capital from Rome, they moved it to Constantinople, which is now Istanbul. The reason that they did that was because Rome had conquered all of Spain, all of Italy, all the way around the Mediterranean, all through Libya, Algeria, Morocco. They owned the entire Mediterranean, and they were pushing the empire out to the west toward Iran. They were trying to conquer the Persian empires, the Babylonian empires. They were trying to make their way toward China and fulfill, like, follow in Alexander the Great's shoes, because Alexander the Great made it all the way to India. So they were trying to push that way. They moved the capital to Istanbul to be closer to the action, so to speak, to the front lines to keep pushing. And then, as we all know, the Vandals and the Gauls came down and sacked Rome. And they lost the old capital. They lost the namesake for the empire. They had the new Eastern Roman Empire, which we call the Byzantine Empire nowadays, or the Justinian Empire nowadays. Back then, they still just called it the Roman Empire, though, even though Rome wasn't a part of it. What year was that in? What year was which part in, where they moved the capital? (330 CE), the same time aroundabouts that they formed the Catholic Church with the Council of Nicaea. When did the Roman Empire fall? (395), so about 70 years later. Emperor Justinian, the dude who had moved the capital, was dead by that point, and the Vandals came in and took the capital. They found mines in the Bosphorus coming all the way from Ukraine recently. Holy heck, that's scary, man. Stay out of the water. Stay out of the water. Yeah, no way. No way. I don't like that, man. Anyway. But yeah, no, that's how that kind of got kicked off. That's how that kind of rose and fell and moved around. I'd like to talk more, I think, next time about I'd like to talk a little bit more about some of the other religions around the world. I think I want to talk about some more unique or distinctive world religions that people don't often hear or get to talk very much about. Obviously, I would like to have guests on that actually practice these religions. I hate talking about them myself, being the way that I look and having the field that I have. Anthropologists have a terrible reputation of grabbing other people's culture and being like, hey, look at this thing here. It's like a really neat looking thing. Don't we all want to talk about it? And I try to be as conscientious as possible as an anthropologist that these are people's cultures we were talking about. These are people's ancient traditions and things that are extremely sacred to them that we're discussing, and they shouldn't be brought out and mocked like they're novelties. I want to point out how amazing and how beautiful the artwork that these people produce, and the reason that they produce these pieces of artwork, and what it means to them, and how much they're trying to share with us all as a result of this. But again, I don't know. I get a little bit apprehensive. I'd hate to start saying a bunch of things about Islam and mischaracterize a bunch of things and have a bunch of Muslim individuals angry at me for blaspheming their religion. The same way that I'm apprehensive about talking about too many Christians and about the things that Christians believe, because if I say the wrong thing that your individual particular sect that is the way that it is disagrees with, I don't want to upset you and invalidate your particular religious philosophy. I have my own philosophy in reality. I haven't shared it with you. Again, if anyone would like to ask me about it, I would love to discuss it, but I don't want to sit here and tell you all about who I am and what I do unless you're curious, and I don't want to tell you all about someone else and what they do if they're not here to correct me when I say it wrong. Yoo-hoo, Bronto! I'm trying to, dude. Look at me go. I'm a preacher now. No way, that would be a terrible job for me. Let's see here. Hadrian's Wall had a religion on the north side of the wall. A religion? Like a religious writing? Let's look into that. Hadrian's Wall. Mithras and Eastern religion on Hadrian's Wall. Yeah, this is a temple of Mithra. The secret cult of Mithra. Ooh, it's not secret. Everybody knows about it. It was secret at the time, but like everybody knew about it at the time too. I will ask you, I am curious, can I hop in? Yes, Dr. Entropi, you can hop in. You're sitting right there. Everybody give me a moment. I'm going to give you a little bit of this background music thing that I've got here. Hopefully it works and doesn't blow your ears out or demonetize my stream, because this is just placeholder music.
Y'all didn't know. You in the midst of another classic. World famous DJ Ski.
Just at the crib, man. Smoking that Asian fantasy. Drinking them tea cakes. Think about how beautiful life is, man. Check it out. Smoke 'em if you got 'em. We came to the top all the way from the bottom. And I'm just trying to count my blessings. I wouldn't live here to go to heaven in a flying limousine. Limousine. A goddamn flying limousine. In a flying limousine. Limousine. I wouldn't live here to go to heaven in a flying limousine. I'm by the fire, Hugh Hefner-esque. Feeling like I just found a huge treasure chest. I used to never sweat death, now I trip about it. This life's too good for me to even live without it. It's so surreal, and it ain't about the dough or the deal. It's about the feeling in your soul that you feel when that little feeling in your soul becomes real. Lady Luck crept up on me like a crazy fuck. Tapped me with the wand on the shoulder as a way of making up for the tears that have poured. The years I've endured when anxiety and fear left me floored. The stress would creep from down under like koala bears. Had me gritting my teeth and pulling out my noggin hairs. But now through some type of dumb luck I've come up and I'm awestruck by my surroundings. So smoke 'em if you got 'em. We came to the top all the way from the bottom. And I'm just trying to count my blessings. I wouldn't live here to go to heaven in a flying limousine. Limousine. A goddamn flying limousine. In a flying limousine. Limousine. And I wouldn't live here to go to heaven in a flying limousine. So never say never. The pain from the past makes the pleasure way better. You gotta feel the lowest lows to get the highest highs. Blow your nose, dry your eyes, open roads, waiting, then it's time to drive. Isn't it scenic after all the world's small while you trying to see it faster? Beautiful woman hitchhiking while you speeding past her. Pick her up and take a visit into greener pastures. The road of life's bumpy like cobblestone. Pothole, problem prone, seatbelt digging in your collarbone. But you are not alone. Stand still, traffic even in the no stopping zone. The slow lane will never be your own lane. Merge left and get the fuck up the road, man. Me and EOM are in our own plane. Look directly up and see us at the window saying, smoke 'em if you got 'em. We came to the top all the way from the bottom. And I'm just trying to count my blessings.
All right. So we have a guest. I'm going to go ahead and bring them on here in a second. What'd you guys think of my music, by the way? That's my favorite frickin' song in the world because it's so mellow, makes me happy. Anyway, I've got a guest. I'm going to go ahead and bring them on, and we're going to introduce them to us. If I can figure out how to do it. That's not it at all, is it? Whoop. Boom! There we are. How we doing today?
Doing good. How are you doing?
Fantastic. Can you tell me how you'd like me to pronounce your name?
My screen name?
Yeah,
Dr.
sure.
Entropy.
Whatever you want me to call you.
Oh, Dr. Entropy is fine.
Dr.
Or
Entropy.
Doc or whatever you want. You can make it. You can play on that. Whatever you want.
Perfect. All right, Doc. Well, you're new here. I've seen you in chat a couple of times. Would you like to introduce yourself to the rest of the people here in chat?
Hi, chat. I am Dr. Entropy. I did stream some time back speedrunning, but I haven't streamed for a while. And now I was just curious about our friends and buddy online here. And yeah, I live in Colorado, but I'm actually not a US citizen. I'm a Danish citizen. So my first language is Danish, but hopefully I can speak somewhat understandable English for you guys since I live here.
I think that you're very articulate and you speak English very fluently, and I could probably
It's part
tell
of my job.
That's good. How long have you been in the United States or in Colorado for, or outside of Daneland?
Since end of January 2020.
2020. Oh my goodness. So right around the COVID time, away you go, and locked up you did.
Yes, I did.
Have you gotten to see much of the United States since you've been here at all, or only inside of your apartment?
I live in a house.
Oh,
so
well,
I'm
home.
very
I'm
privileged.
sorry.
I'm very privileged. I'm living in Colorado, beautiful nature. So honestly, I in Copenhagen, I lived in an apartment. So I'm very happy to have been here for COVID because I could actually go outside, even in my own yard. And we did do a drive where we drove to California and then back through Vegas. So we've seen some of it, not a lot of it, and definitely would have loved to see more. But because of COVID, we've been isolated for most of the stay here. And I'm actually leaving end of July because the visa expires. So,
My goodness. And is that the end of your time? Are you going to be coming back? Does your contract renew later and maybe you'll come back in the future?
I don't have any active plans on coming back. I go where the good jobs are for me, and this was in Colorado, and now the next one is in Finland.
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful. I hear that Finland is another very beautiful country.
Yeah, I guess in its own way. It's very, think of like England in terms of weather, very cloudy and dark all the time. So Colorado is more beautiful. Let's say that, but it's hard to beat.
Have you had a chance to make it to Yellowstone?
No.
Please, 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 before you go home, make
Which
sure you
I
go and
want to.
visit. I painted my walls because of it.
Yeah, that's a day trip from here, roughly. So.
Oh my gosh, and such a beautiful day it is. It's a little expensive to get into the park, and I think that when you go, you get to buy a week's worth of access. So maybe plan it where you can go a couple of days and go back through because you can't see it all
I'll
in
go
one
over
day.
like a long weekend or something.
But again, absolutely beautiful. My suggestion because of the part of the world that you're in. But I
Yeah.
did want to bring you on. I wanted to chat with you about yourself, about where you've been, about the things that you've seen. But I guess you also had some questions for me.
I jumped in because you mentioned something about your life philosophy or like something to that effect, and I was very curious because you hadn't elaborated on that, and I was very curious about that. Like, what's your outlook on like life in general, and what's your life's philosophy?
So life in general is a very difficult thing. I think that people are here for sort of an unknown reason, for an indeterminate amount of time, and we have unlimited options to do as many things as we could possibly ever want to do during the limited time that we have here on Earth. And it doesn't really matter what we do too much during that time, as long as we do something. And that thing that we do should be productive. the more people we help with that thing, the more people are going to appreciate what we're doing, the more help we're going to get in the thing that we're doing. So if you are doing good things, people are going to want to help you to do those things. If you are doing bad things, people are going to want to stop you from doing those things. So if you do good things publicly with the help of other people, you have a more happy, social, public, friendly life, if that makes sense. I've always been of the philosophy that if you're sad, if you're miserable doing the things that you're doing, you need to stop doing what you're doing. Figure out what is going to make you happy, and you have to go and do that right away. There are social consequences involved in doing what you want to do. For example, if you live in a very traditional, fundamental Mormon community and you go, hey, I want to go drink a big pot of coffee today, you're going to have a problem in your community as a result of that. And so maybe drink your coffee in the basement. But if you form a coffee addiction, that's going to start to show publicly, and you might have an issue with your community again due to your coffee addiction. Oh, I'm sorry, I need to check this real quick.
Like chat or...
Yeah, I've got just chat talking.
Yeah.
Okay. Just the good friends giving me a good rubbing.
I
ribbing.
see Jade the Green said hi to me, so hi Jade the Green.
Oh yeah, they're a good friend. They've been following me for quite a bit.
Just read chat, so cool.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I'm asking you, and I'm interested in you specifically because you, from what I've seen so far, which is not too much, you seem to have a very admirable character, and I certainly admire the way you put things and the way you your outlook. So that's why I'm curious, and I'm also curious if you have sort of any labels that you could put on, like do you have like a religious? Are you religious in any way, or where do you come from? Where does your outlook in life come from?
Labels are something that I really struggle with personally. The reason I chose my name, Somebody Online, is because I didn't want to present any labels to anyone at the beginning. I'm just somebody. And originally I was Some Dummy Online because I felt like that was more ambiguous. I feel somebody kind of implies a gender, the way that my mustache kind of implies a gender. And I
just shaved today, so
I don't necessarily want to like project to anybody like this is who I am. I started wearing my hat and I started wearing my bow tie and my coat, and everybody started saying, well, you look like a professor, you look like Indiana Jones. And then I started saying, well, I did go to school for anthropology, so I know a little bit about this, but I don't necessarily identify myself as an anthropologist. So again, labels are something that I really struggle with.
Which in itself tells me something.
Right, there you go. That makes sense. I have myself. I have my own perspective on myself, and I can tell you what I think of myself as, but then I'm kind of projecting and I'm giving ideas to you, and I'm putting on a face and I'm telling you this is what I want you to see of me and this is what I want you to think of me. But then at the same time, you're looking at that mask, that sign that I'm showing you, and you're assuming at the thing behind it, and you're guessing as to what I actually am. And so there's like 4 different versions of myself in this presentation. The one that I actually am, the one that I'm showing you, the one that you're seeing, and then the one that you're imagining is behind it all. And all of these things don't necessarily matter. And so if I put a label onto something, like if I tell you I'm a man, someone will say, well, this isn't a real man. And if I go, well, I'm a professional anthropologist, someone else will come and say, well, he's not a real anthropologist. And if I say, well, I am a Christian, some Christian person is going to go, he's not a real Christian, he's going to hell. And if I go, I'm a Taoist, they're going to go, you're not a Taoist, you don't even know what Taoism is. But
what do you self-identify as matters, no matter what chat says, honestly.
If people were asking me, hey, what are you? I like the word Taoist. In Western civilization, people don't know enough about what it is, but I have been told by other Taoist people that I'm misrepresenting what Taoism is when I describe it. And so I don't necessarily want to put that label onto the thing that I'm doing, because I'm doing a thing kind of based on my own personal philosophy. I was raised I learned a lot of different martial arts from a lot of different people when I was growing up, and there's a little bit of spiritual philosophy that comes along with learning martial arts. I was brought up in a couple of different religious organizations that had more to do with Christianity, and then going through anthropology, we look at different cultures and we look at different religions from a very analytical, or through a very analytical lens, and we deconstruct religions and we look at, okay, why do Christians think this, and how is it different than Gnostic peoples, and what's the difference between a Catholic and an Orthodox individual, and why are all of these things different than Judaism, and how do all of these things relate back to Islam, because it's all the God of Abraham at the end of the day, but who the heck was this guy, and what does Gilgamesh have to do with any of it? And it all kind of links back together. And then when you go look at science and you look at what biologists are saying, well, we get another story there that paints another picture. And if you go, well, this story invalidates that story, and this story invalidates that story, we can like ignore everything and say nothing is true, or we can look at it all together and we can say, well, there's a truth to all of these different things. Like, okay, we didn't have a snake that was talking to Adam and Eve in the garden to talk about an apple of some sort necessarily, but there is something to be said about the idea of knowledge. Are you familiar with the Adam and Eve story and the apple and all of this?
Oh, yeah. So I was, to give you some perspective, I was brought up in Denmark, where like Christianity is sort of, it's taking a bit of a backseat for most people, but I was still brought up Christian, but not as you would, not in like an American Christian way. So you're not going to church every Sunday. Stuff like that. Again, this is my prejudice coming out, but there was barely any Christianity sort of in the day-to-day life. But I was still brought up Christian, so I know these things. Also, I've met a lot of people from different Christian denominations, and I've actually read major parts of the Bible out of curiosity. I've known someone very close to me who was a Jehovah's Witness when he was brought up, but then came out of it. And he studied the Bible like intensely, so I know a bunch of stuff about, maybe more than most people actually, about the Bible. Not a Christian myself.
Well, and so I think maybe that's a misconception. I don't think that a majority of American people are going to church every Sunday here either. I think that there are some people that are going to church like 7 days a week. There are some people that are going to church every Sunday, and then there's a lot of people that probably haven't been to a church in 10 years, and the last time they went is we always go on Christmas because you're supposed to go on Christmas.
Right. I think a majority in Denmark are secular Christians.
Right. And I, from what I understand, a lot of Europe, particularly in the Scandinavian nations, like Christianity is like part of the history. There's like a heritage.
Christianity, there's no separation of church and state in Denmark.
Okay.
So the monarch is actually forced to be part of the state church. So there's a state church. You can decide to not be part of it, but most people will be signed in at birth.
Right.
Unless you come from, say, Muslim family or something else, then you don't like it. That's something your parents put on you. But yeah, it is a big part of the country, because it's literally, our flag is a cross that came from like a crusade we did in Estonia. So like there's a bunch of Christianity in the country. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's linked to like the national heritage. Like you are the nation, like they're intrinsically linked. And while you guys may not be as religious anymore, spiritual anymore, it might not be as much of a focus. It's part of the country.
Scandinavian countries are some of the most secular and have the highest percentage of atheists and agnostic people. So it is a big part of the heritage, but it is a small part of the daily life, I would say.
The United States is also a very secular nation, and it's becoming more secular, but there is like a lot of people in the United States that feel like, well, no, we should have a national religion. We need to codify that this is important so that even if we become a completely secular society, we can still lean back on our heritage and say, well, no, historically speaking, like this is a historically Christian nation, but it's technically not codified.
It's historically a secular nation, actually, because you do have separation of church and state.
Right. And again, like this is a political discussion that I have with Americans all the time. But again, back to where we started this whole thing, Garden of Eden.
Garden of Eden, yeah.
So there is this concept of humans don't know the difference between good and evil. It's impossible to sin. And then there's the two trees. You can eat from the tree of life as much as you want and you'll live forever in the garden. But if you eat from the tree of knowledge, you're going to be thrown out of the garden. You're going to be denied access to the tree of life, and you're going to understand that you're sinning. You're going to learn the difference between right and wrong. And there's a lot of, in Christianity, emphasis put on the original sin and on the choice to defy God's will, and you did what you're not supposed to do, and now you're being punished with this knowledge that you're sinning. But what we're talking about is self-awareness. People became self-aware. People developed the concept of ethics. People became able to go, no, you should not have done that. That was a bad thing to do. Animals don't have a concept of right and wrong. Animals just act on instinct. People have this ability to like cognitively go, wait a minute, should I have done that? Is it okay for me to hurt this person? Is it okay for me to take this fruit? And that's the actual story. That's
a different perspective on Adam and Eve, for sure.
Yeah, but again, that was what they were trying to put in the book. That's what they were trying to tell people. Animals are different than people because we have morals, because we can self-rationalize, because we can self-reflect. But then we've had this whole thing about, no, snakes are the most evil animal on earth and it's the woman's fault. And it's like, guys. So
there is a lot of archaic stuff about men and women in the Bible, I must admit.
But again, this is the piece of truth that comes out of the story. There's a reason that they wrote the book in the first place. And I can pull this piece out of the Christianity and I can shake it off and I can go, this is the important part of Christianity, and I can set it off to the side. Or this is the important part of the Adam and Eve story, and I can set it off to the side. And I do this to other religions. But when I do that in front of Christians sometimes, they go, that's not what it means. And I go, I'm sorry that you don't feel that way. I'm sorry that nobody's ever told you the real meaning of this story. But did you also know that Santa Claus isn't real either? And anyway, I like the word Taoism. Have you ever heard of Taoism? Do you know anything about that religion?
No, that's actually a gap in my knowledge, and I was going to ask you about that. And now you said that some people think you're not a Taoist, but give me your perspective on it at least.
I thank you very much for clarifying.
If you will.
I appreciate that. Gee Willikers, I really like you already. You are a fantastic individual, and I like the way that you clarify the things that you're actually asking. You know what you are asking for.
I am a curious person by nature. I think that's my most dominant trait.
I want to ask you just briefly, can you tell me what you do for a living?
I am a postdoctoral researcher in chemistry. So I do research for a living.
I understand.
Which is inherently curiosity drives me. So
and particular, like it's very important when you're researching things that you know exactly what this information is.
Yes, I spend a lot of time discerning information, also from previous authors. So I am very particular and very curious, and this is more me at a casual state than like on my professional stage still. So I'm not as particular now as I would be in my work, but so I am very curious about other things as well, not just chemistry. Yeah. And this explains kind of how I got here, the visa and all. They needed me specifically.
And I appreciate that. I don't mean to get too personal. I can just tell that you are of a higher intellectual caliber than the general population, and you understand the differences in types of information. Intellectual
Thank you.
caliber, that sounds backhanded to other people. But I could tell you're a big smarty pants.
Don't diss the general population. I'm sure they're doing fine too.
Exactly. I don't. My name is some dummy online because I know that I'm the dumbest person on the internet. That's why I come on here and talk like this.
You're not, so.
Anyway, Taoism.
Yes, Taoism, please.
Is an ancient philosophy from like 300 BC in ancient China. It is said to have been written by the Taoist teacher Lao Tzu. And Lao Tzu...
Wait, so I guess this might be, we call it Taoism.
Taoism.
In Danish with a T.
Yeah. But
Okay.
in Chinese, T's and D's are very similar.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, I've heard of it, but I still don't know a lot of it, so.
So...
Okay, thank you.
No, you're okay. In ancient China, around the same age, there were a few different people that all wrote these very important books that very much influenced society and culture. You had Confucius, you had Lao Tzu, and then some people put the third one as Sun Tzu, and the other put the third one as Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha. And these three philosophies kind of all come together to form what we would consider the ancient Chinese religion. Lao Tzu was one of these three. He created a book called the Tao Te Ching, and the Tao Te Ching is like, as the story goes, as he was leaving China through the western border, one of the border guards said, "You have to write down all of your teachings before we're going to let you leave the empire." He wrote the Tao Te Ching, like, there on the spot, handed it to the guard, and then left, never to return again. Nobody knows if he was a real person. Nobody knows if he actually wrote the book. Nobody knows if it was actually handed to a border guard or if that story of the origin is true. But that's the theory of where this thing came from. The book is full of a bunch of very cryptic poems that sound a lot like Yoda telling Luke Skywalker how to control the Force. They don't say a lot of anything, except that they also say a lot of very important things. And then again,
So this how did you pronounce it? Lao Tzu or?
the Tao Te Ching.
Okay, Tao Te Ching. I'm probably not gonna be able to pronounce that today, but I have not heard of this person before. I've heard of Confucius and the Buddha and Sun Tzu, but I have actually not heard of the
I
first
will
person.
see if I can send you a link to the book before we leave today, since I've got you
Sure,
on
thank you.
Discord here.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's a bunch of little, like, 1 or 2 sentence things. The translation of the book into whatever local language, like, you're going to have a much better option with this, because hopefully you can find something that was translated directly from Chinese to Danish and directly from Chinese to English, and then with your beautiful multilingualism be able to read both texts and see the differences based on the linguistic context between the two. Because even people that are reading it in Chinese are not reading it in ancient Chinese.
Right.
So nobody really has the original true meanings of these weird statements. And they're things like the sound of one hand clapping and which raindrop landing on the roof is the loudest. I can't really, like, give you a bunch of these individual things, but Taoism as a whole, the Tao in Chinese means the way or the path. And so the concept is that all of life is kind of moving down a path. The river is flowing downstream, and if you are a fish in the stream, if you try to swim up the stream, you're going to fight it all the way and it's going to be difficult. But if you turn around and you flow with the stream, it's going to be much easier to go with the flow and to pass with it. You have to avoid the rocks as you're flowing through and stay a part of it, or out of the way of it. But the next step past that is you have to realize that you're not actually a fish, that you're part of the stream, you're some of the water, and you have to go with the water. You can't insert force on it, you can't enforce a will on it. You have to kind of ride with life. You have to see the obstacles that are coming, and you have to get out of the way of the rocks as they're coming at you, but you can't fight against the rocks. You can't fight against the water. We're all going down the river, and we're all going there together. We're all going to get there at the same time. You can't go faster, you can't go slower. Sometimes you get into an eddy, and the water spins a little bit, but then it always breaks away and it continues down on the path again. So...
Is this a deterministic philosophy, or
clarify.
as in no free will?
There is certainly free will in Taoism, because we can
Okay.
all choose to fight against the Tao, or we can choose to go with the flow of the Tao. It's kind of the things that are inevitably
we're
going to
going
happen
nonetheless.
are inevitably going to happen. You can either fight against them or you can allow them to happen. So there is a level of determinism to it, but the path that you take to get to that final destination can vary.
Okay.
Deterministic in the fact that maybe we are all going to eventually die, but when and where and how and what we do between now and then is kind of still up in the air.
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
To clarify, Taoism does have a lot of other aspects to it. It is a very serious, deep cultural and religious organization. There are Taoist monks that dedicate their lives to these practices and to following very specific traditions to keep their Tao clean and pure. A friend of mine was telling me recently about ancient Taoist alchemy, which was an attempt to keep Taoist monks celibate for their entire life so that they could attain eternal life, because it's draining your ki when you have intimate relations, apparently, or something. I don't buy into a lot of these things, but again, if you read the books and you get the message about the raindrop in the water, there's something there that can be learned that can make it easier to not fight against the world, if that makes sense.
That makes sense, yeah. Just seeing what Chad is saying.
Yeah, that's what I was just doing too. Where's Desperado Sensei when we need him? He's probably at work or at school. Lao Tzu was probably a conglomeration of thinkers rather than a single person. I don't disagree with that. I think that it is like a pen name that got attributed to the book. The I Ching is a trip. I Ching, from what I understand, is like a superstition kind of a luck or a witchcraft kind of a book. It's like a book of black magic. Little Grape, I saw you on CuteBot stream, thought you were a pretty cool dude, just wanted to tell you, thanks for coming by. I really appreciate you being here, Little Grape. Wheels have spokes. Absence makes the wheels work. That's funny. I can know where that hat is from. This hat is a Sunday afternoon. Haha. I got it on Amazon. It says it was made in China, but Sunday Afternoons is the name of the company that made it, and I think that it's called a Rambler hat, if I'm not mistaken. The thing that is neat about this hat is that it is crushable. I can smash it into a ball, and then I can pop it back out again, and it goes right back on my head in perfect shape. I love my hat so much. I will maybe have to put an Amazon link in my bio or something so that everybody else can get the hat and a bow tie if they want one. Maybe I get a bow tie sponsor. What do you guys think? Bow tie sponsorship? Anyway, Dr. Entropy, is there anything else?
I was curious about, you mentioned the way you were brought up. There was like a Christian aspect, but you were also brought up with a lot of martial arts. I myself did karate as a kid. I dropped it when I was about 15, I think. Shotokan karate. So I got some of that Japanese culture in there, but learned a few Japanese things, but that's about it. But what was your martial arts, and also I'm curious if you want to share that, like what Christianity were you brought up in?
So we'll start with the second one. I was born in the United States. My family I've talked about on other streams, but I haven't talked about here. My father is a Latin American of Latin American descent, but he looks very much like me in his complexion. He speaks English very much like I do, with the similar accent to the way that I do, and is the term is white passing from what I understand. My mother's family were Syrian refugees back during World War I, around the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. They were fleeing and ended up in the United States. It was easier to get into the United States if you had certain religious backgrounds as opposed to other religious backgrounds, so Christianity was the preferred religious background. My grandparents were agnostic. My mother was raised non-religious, but identifying as Christian. Shortly before I was born, right around the time that she was married, she decided we have to be religious if we're going to have children, and we were raised with kind of a religious background, but we bounced in between churches. We spent some time with the LDS Church, which is the Mormons. We spent some time with the Jehovah's Witnesses, but didn't go down that path. Spent some time with some Baptists, with some Lutherans, with some Methodists. Ended up doing the non-secular, just generic Christian thing. And I don't think that my mother's been in a church in over 25 years at this point, but she reads her Bible regularly enough that she knows what God really meant. And she'll tell you all about it if you wanted to ask her. When I was in high school, I started learning about science, and that science was real, and how science worked. And then when I went to university, anthropology was the thing to do. It was pointed out to me a while back that I was learning anthropology to prove evolution to Christian people. And then I was like, oh no, what am I doing? And I changed fields a couple of times, went into linguistic and cultural anthropology, and then started looking into other things, and then started trying to get rid of racism and all sorts of other impossible tasks. And then we got a real job. So I have like the generic American Christian upbringing, but then after that I really, really studied theology extremely heavily to understand Christianity completely and all of the different sects, all the different denominations, and then I looked at all of the other cultures in the rest of the world to try to discern what the differences were between different religions. Sky Command is here. I got raided, I think. What's up? What's up? I'm sorry, I need to check this real quick.
Yeah, no, check chat. I don't see a raid though.
Yeah, no, it doesn't look like a raid. It looks like I just have the big man himself. How you doing, Mr. Sky Command? Thank you for coming by. Thank you for bringing Arctic Turn. Thank you for bringing Blue Mana Battery yesterday. All of the good people are here. Dope Slangin' is back again. Man, oh man, I've been here for 2 hours, Dope Slangin' 420. I appreciate you being here. The other question that you asked me, something about martial arts, I think?
Which ones did you practice?
I started when I was 6 years old at a Tong Sudo school. Then I did Taekwondo and I did Kuk Mu Kwan. I did some Tai Chi. I did some Muay Thai. I did Hapkido. I took a little bit of Aikido and a little bit of Kenjutsu. I did some Muay Thai in Thailand for a little bit. I did some Kempo karate for a little bit. I did some traditional English boxing for a little bit, and then I was a sparring partner for a couple of people in the UFC before I decided that I didn't like getting punched. I did Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I did some Krav Maga for a little while because someone told me it was very important to know how to do those things. And then I played with people that did Judo. But I love martial arts. I love talking to martial artists about the way that they do martial arts, and I want to know why their martial arts are different than my martial arts, and I want to learn all of their tricks, and I want to show them all of my tricks. And
you've done a lot of different martial arts. I'm impressed.
I taught martial arts for a very long time when I lived in California still, and then bouncing around, it's easy to, oh yeah, you need personal trainer, martial arts, let's do this and that. And I've always been very passionate about it. And if you go to someone that has a school and they're teaching you, oh, I'm really passionate about this. Can I help? I want to sweep the floor. They let you sweep the floor. And, oh, can I punch it too? And pretty soon they're teaching you how to punch and how to do everything. And you're helping, and it's community building. It's a family thing. Like martial arts and religion, for me, are the same thing. There's very little difference between the two.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a lot of different martial arts. The first and the third one you mentioned, I actually don't know what they are, where they come from. But
So
you don't have to if you don't.
no, I
It's too
can
much.
explain. Tang Soo Do is an ancient Korean martial art. There are depictions of people doing it from 2 or 3,000 years ago that they found in caves. So when you hear about Taekwondo and people jumping around, Taekwondo was actually invented in the 1950s to be taught
Yeah.
to South Korean troops during the war. It was based on karate, which is a Japanese martial art, but it took influences from the ancient Korean fighting style, and they used the proof of these cave paintings to say this is an ancient Korean art that comes from Korea and it doesn't have any Chinese or Japanese influences. This is us and this is ours and we made this. So Tang Soo Do is that ancient art form pre-Taekwondo's development. Taekwondo is a martial art that was developed for the military in the 50s and has since then become an Olympic sport that's taught at the Kukido, which is in South Korea, is the big organization that controls that. And Kukmu Kwan is an offshoot of Taekwondo that broke away in like the 60s or the 70s and was adopted and created by Grandmaster Hyung Hee and was propagated primarily in the United States.
Okay.
I trained directly with Dr. Young Yi and Danny Iasanto, if you know who he is. Danny Iasanto is the person that taught Bruce Lee nunchucks.
Oh, okay.
And so
Cool.
he's a Jeet Kune Do instructor still today. And Grandmaster Young Yi and he, everybody knows each other. And they've all got their own martial arts with their own fancy name attached to them. Because once you really know what you're doing, you get to name it yourself, apparently.
Yeah, I stopped completely when I was 15, so that's 16 years ago. So
Golly.
that's why I'm not as familiar as I may have been at some point. But yeah, I did do Shotokan karate for like 7 years. So since I was 6 years, since I was like 9 or something. So I had some experience with that, and then I briefly did. I think I had 2 sessions where I did UFC style. And then someone broke my nose, and then I decided no. So,
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the UFC personally. I don't
it's
like.
a blood sport.
Yeah, I don't like what it's done
very
to martial
interesting,
arts.
but it's insane too. It's the most real out of everything, like in terms of how actual combat works, in my opinion. But because there's no holds barred, basically. But it's so insane.
So I'm curious. Well, actually, there are a lot of rules in the UFC. It's not no holds barred, which is
Okay.
a very
It's-
big misnomer that frustrates me. But I want to ask you, since you do speak Danish, is there a word for martial arts in Danish?
Yeah, kampsport,
And this
Which
translated
means-
directly?
fighting sport.
Fighting sport. Okay.
Yeah.
See, this is more in line with the actual meaning of the word.
Right.
So, like, in English, martial arts, like, specifically means, like,
Lethal art.
no, kind
No?
of. It has, like,
Yeah.
an inherently Asian connotation to it. If you ask
Okay.
an American person, is boxing or American-style wrestling, is this a martial art? And they would say, no, that's a fighting style.
Okay.
And then I get confused and I'm like, so martial arts are different than fighting styles? And the
We
difference
just have
is...
that one term for it all.
Right. And in Chinese, the 2 characters for martial arts are to stop a spear. And so it's the art of stopping spears.
Mm-hmm.
When you go to China, they also teach the art of stopping spears, or military training is a word, or combat sports. Like,
Okay.
the thing that we're trying to teach in martial arts is how to punch the other person in the face and avoid getting punched in the face while you're doing it. And it doesn't matter whether you take karate or taekwondo or jiu-jitsu or kung fu or krav maga or gun fu. Like, at the end of the day, you're not going to hit me because I'm punching you. And that's...
Right. That's also what I was taught a lot of the time.
So people often will say things like, oh, you learned karate, that's not real martial arts. Muay Thai guys, they would beat you. Or if you met a Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy, he would X,
Yeah,
Y.
that's very common. Yeah.
But it's not, we're not playing Pokemon cards. It's not, oh, I can beat you with this one because I have one of these in my hand. It comes down to person and person.
Yeah, and I did Japanese style karate, and what that was good for is standing combat, definitely. But floor combat, not at all. We did nothing of that. So of course, like someone who did judo, for instance, if we were to go on the floor, I would have no idea what to do, for instance. So yeah, I agree that they all have their own thing they're good at. I know Taekwondo is great at kicks, for instance. I had a friend who did Taekwondo when I was a kid. And she actually went to North Korea for a tournament at some point, which was kind of interesting. Yeah. I found that a bit insane to do, but to each their own. I mean, she was fine. They were fine. And I've met another person, a professor actually, who also has gone to North Korea just to run a marathon. I don't know why, but he seems to have an affinity to go to places that may be a bit dangerous. Sometimes he did a road trip in Afghanistan when the invasion started, but no one knows why. And he also has later elaborated and said that maybe that was a terrible idea. So.
Yeah, I have done some things and gone some places that other people have told me similar things. Back to the thing with the martial arts, I do understand what you're saying with karate as a stand-up martial art. Someone doing judo or jiu-jitsu or aikido that focuses more on groundwork is going to have a set of tools that you might not have been taught. Like, what these things all come down to is, originally there was an old man that said, hey, I'm going to teach all of you people how to fight. And then he taught them, and then all of those students went on and said, I'm going to teach you guys how to fight the same way that my grandfather taught me how to fight. And then years later, those students went and they said, well, I'm going to teach you the same way that I learned how to fight. And so you have a tradition and you have a heritage that goes all the way back.
Yeah, it's very traditional, yeah.
If you ever have one person that learns karate and another martial art, and they learn two different things, and they no longer follow the one tradition and teaching the same way that their master did, but now they're learning from two different sources and they form a new thing, do we create a new name for this, or do we say, well, I'm doing karate judo? And this is where mixed martial arts as a word came from, because we're mixing karate and we're mixing judo together. We're coming up with this new philosophy. But at the end of the day, everything is all the same. Keep your elbows in, keep your hands high, guard your face, keep your knees and your elbows tucked into the center. And Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu are the same martial art, but you do one standing up and you do the other one laying down. The thing that I always tell people that do a lot of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and they go, oh, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab you, I'm going to lay on the ground, is I always tell them you have to be careful, because what if I have a hepatitis or some kind of a disease of some sort and you want to roll around with me on the ground? You're going to be sick. Like,
yeah, or you meet someone who will just knock you out with a sucker punch.
Right, exactly.
Gotta be able to dodge that at least at bare minimum. So I mean, yeah, I think mixing the sports do create better fighters organically, in my opinion. And like, you've shopped around a lot. So I believe you have with a broader background, you're probably better able to apply different scenarios and different techniques to different situations.
Yeah.
That's my opinion, at least.
The best judge that I have ever found to figure it out is you ask someone how long they've been training for, how long they've been doing martial arts for, and people that have been doing it longer, it doesn't matter what martial art they do. If they've been doing it longer than you, they've been practicing longer than you, they're going to do better than you.
Yeah.
Granted,
Ultimately, I think the most important lesson I was taught doing karate was to avoid fighting at all costs, basically. And I think that was actually quite helpful. There was a lot of tools about de-escalation, for instance, that was taught to me. And I think that was way more important than any technique that I was actually taught. And I think I've also come to appreciate that the more mass you have when it comes to close combat sport, the better you're gonna perform almost in every scenario. I've come to learn that from just practicing. Practice briefly some floor sport, for instance, and just seeing like me weighing 10 or 20 kilograms more than someone else, that just gave me a huge advantage that they could not beat, even if I was a novice. So there's some principles there, and there's a reason why many, not all of the martial arts have weight categories.
Right.
And that's a good reason.
Right. Well, Roman Jedi Master here is saying, yes, our teacher taught us how to both run and fight.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's important to acknowledge that there are fights, there are situations that you can be in. I mean, it doesn't matter how much training you have. If you have a big enough group of people, they will get the better of you. You can't fight a war all on your own. There's a reason you need an army.
Absolutely, yeah.
I always give people the recommendation whenever they ask me, which martial art should I learn? Which one is the best? I always tell them Aikido is my personal favorite because of the spiritual aspect of it. And because, well, and spiritual is the wrong word, but the philosophical aspect to it. There are no strikes in Aikido, so it's almost impossible to be the aggressor in Aikido. Aikido is all about if someone throws an attack at you and they're coming forward, you pull them forward further and faster to take their balance away from them. And so I was talking with someone that did much more Aikido than myself, and I have more of an experience in Hapkido than what he did. And we both I can't remember how we got there, but the subject was, do you know what happens when a Aikido master and a Hapkido master encounter each other on a bridge and they decide that they have to fight?
No.
They walk past each other and bow as they go. Because if someone doesn't ever throw the first punch, no one can fight with either one of those two arts because they are inherently reactionary to an attack.
Okay, yeah.
So they would both stop, they would look at each other, wonder who was going to attack first, and then probably go in opposite directions or walk past each other.
That's cool. If I were to come up with a recommendation to like what fighting sport, it would also be based on like your body type, your physical capabilities. Let's say Taekwondo would be terrible fit for me because I cannot kick past the torso level, and I have very unflexible hips, and I'm also more of a massive dude. So something that is more, let's say boxing, I would be probably good at that because I'm top heavy as well. While maybe some other sports that takes more grace I would not be good at, but other people might. So finding something that maybe matches your temperament and body type is also important, I think.
I don't disagree, but again, if that is the case with you, I almost want to give you the exact opposite advice, which
Try
is
to find something that's opposite of what I'm already good at.
Find your natural weaknesses and try to expand on those the best of your ability. I knew one gentleman that did Taekwondo that was 6'4", and he couldn't kick really high either, but it didn't matter because when he would kick high, he was at chest level, he was still kicking most people in the face.
I'm only 6'0", so.
But even still, with the reach on his legs, like I'm not the tallest person in the world. My area of engagement around me is about 10 feet in any direction that I can attack an individual from or defend myself from. But like this person was like 15 feet away. If you got anywhere near him, bang, you had a foot in your face. And again, you need to be able to... A samurai learns how to fight with the spear, with the bow, with the short sword, with the long sword, and with the dagger. Because the spear is not the best weapon, and the bow is not the best weapon, and the sword is not the best weapon. You have to learn them all. It's a hard thing.
That makes sense, yeah.
Did I watch the McGregor Mountain Man fight? I did not. The last person that I watched in the UFC, like, consistently was Lyoto Machida. I was a big fan of Crow Cop back in the day. I was a big fan of Fedor Emelianenko until he did the big retire because they frickin' played him for a fool in Pride. Gee willikers.
One hell of a boy. Are you talking about them sparring
In
or
who?
them actually fighting? The Mountain and McGregor. I've seen the video where they just do sparring. Yeah, Hathor is his name. Mountain from Game of Thrones.
Yeah, did he
Hathor.
actually? Did they do an actual match, or was it just like not
I've
official
seen the
sparring?
video. Yeah, I've seen the video where they just did sparring. So maybe that's what one hell of a boy is talking about. But that was crazy to see because McGregor is actually a small guy, and the Mountain is massive. The dog or hey. Sorry, I've got a cute dog here. Maybe I don't know. Yeah, no.
Oh, here, let me get them off of your face. No, bring the dog back. I've covered you up accidentally. Oh, there he is. Hello.
There's two.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of hard to see because they're very excited now.
They're moving around. That's okay.
Yeah, the small one is out. The big one is your friends. They play very loudly, but they know each other and they're not actually angry at each other.
All right, here, I'm going to cover you up again, and we're going to play this video real quick. I put it in full speed so that it works. Are you able to see this also? Do you have the stream up? Well, here,
Yes, I have the stream up. Yeah.
Here, let me give you a more live feed. That way you're not reacting to things that happened like 3 minutes ago. There you go. And we'll slow it down so that they don't look like ants running around. So he is a lot bigger than him. He bounces around. He doesn't care. You can hit me. It doesn't matter. He grabbed a hold of his head. Will
He's
he
like
ever
2
get away?
meters 10, so.
Nope, he's over the top of him. Oh, and he got away.
And I think he's around 190 kilograms. So I guess that's like 400 pounds.
Yeah, little guy.
So the Mountain, Hafthor Bjornsson, recently had a boxing match against another strongman, Eddie Hall. I don't know if one hell of a boy saw that. But I didn't see that live. I saw the clips from it. But the Hafthor was the one that won. Because Hafthor was still bigger than Eddie Hall.
Does he have... he obviously has some training in boxing.
They both trained boxing for that fight specifically. Because I don't think he had any training beforehand, actually. But they both hate each other. Like, they actually real hate each other. It's a long story, but yeah. So they both wanted to win that one. It wasn't exactly a friendly match.
Okay, I don't like the way that he uses his thumbs.
Hafthor? Or
Yeah, the big one.
yeah.
And then
I mean,
we have a foot that got
point-
stuck in between the legs, and we're grappling up top, playing with our hands.
At that point in time, he did not have any formal training, from what I know. That's 2015 that it was uploaded.
Okay. Yeah, you're
So,
right.
I think he's only had boxing training the last year-ish. And he also lost weight for the boxing match.
He already looks like he's getting very tired.
Yeah. And they were both strong men, so they were both massive dudes. So they both lost weight for the fight, for the boxing fight that I'm talking about.
One hell of a boy. I really disagree. I don't think that the Mountain has much of a chance in this. I mean, I could definitely be wrong. It's one quick grab to end it all, but as long as you can get him tired and keep away from him, you're good.
I think honestly, this kind of fight, McGregor should just like run around until Hafthor is lost his breath. Yeah. I agree.
You should go from one corner to the other corner on this big mat. Just make him walk back and forth until he sits down.
I think the intention with this sparring match is that they actually try and throw punches and do stuff. So in a more real fight, he would definitely just run loops around him.
Yeah.
I guess it depends on the setting. Yeah, he could just grab him and then lay down on him or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, also with him being that small, McGregor should be trying to get to his back in some way.
Yeah. like that. Yeah, it's interesting to see for sure.
Yeah, it's something else. It's something else. Again, sparring matches are always a very interesting thing. Knowing how one fight would go versus another fight. Oh, you mentioned something about the UFC that drives me crazy. You called it no holds barred open combat sport. I really hate it
I
when
agree.
people say that.
It's not entirely true. I think it is less holds barred than many other combat sports, which is why they throw full contact punches and kicks and whatnot.
So it is full contact. We do have to wear padded gloves. We do have to wear certain things to make sure that skin is stays intact. They tried to play with elbowing rules at one point to change the way that people bled. They made elbows more prevalent to increase the amount of blood in matches because they found out that sold more tickets. The moves that are not allowed in the UFC that bother me have to do with small joint manipulation. So if I put someone into a lock, I can put pressure on their shoulder, or I can put pressure on their elbow, I can put pressure on their hip, I can put pressure on their knee, but I can't put pressure on their ankle, and I can't put pressure on their wrist. You also can't interact with the fingers.
Yeah, that's the whole. I remember learning some of these tricks as well.
So there's a lot of locks, there's a lot of holds that exist in a lot of martial arts. I'm sure you learned some in karate. I know that there's some in taekwondo.
I learned about some of the pressure points, and I still know what they are, so I can still.
Pressure points are allowed in the UFC, but all of Aikido bases almost entirely on manipulating the joints in the wrist to do a lot of the work. And so the rules are almost specifically written to make all of the techniques that Aikido uses illegal and to bar a lot of the techniques for a lot of throws and a lot of things. Because they don't want people to be thrown, they want people to be grabbed and put onto the ground so that they can roll around. They want the fights to look a certain way because those are the fights that sell the most money.
Right. The more violence, the better, I guess.
Well, and not just violence, but what people consider to be violence. Because I don't think that sword fights would sell tickets either. There's something about the punching and the two naked men rolling around in the ground that seems to excite people.
I think it's brutality, in a way. I mean, a sword fight with real swords and no armor would be brutal as well, but you can't do that legally.
That's true. But again, I don't know if it would be entertaining. I don't think that it would draw the eyes. I think that there's a certain level of homoeroticism to it.
Okay. I disagree, but I don't know. I tend to disagree. I think UFC is more of a Coliseum style thing, which complies with legality, modern legality, and not just lets people die to lions or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree.
And One Hell of a Voice says we need no rule fighting. That's literally Coliseum style stuff. That's taking it a step further. I disagree with that. I see the kappa, so I think you're joking.
Let's see here. There's that.
I don't want to take up your whole stream though. So,
no, you're quite all right. I'm actually thinking now that we've kind of covered all of the bases. I did really enjoy chatting with you. I
definitely have more stuff I want to talk to you about, but I think it may also be a subject for another time as well.
Well, do you want to give me maybe some highlights? We can determine if we want to go for a little while longer, or maybe we want to start moving toward wrapping things up. What do we have next? What do you want to talk about?
I think I want to wrap things up, but maybe for another time. I would love to talk about the LDS Church.
Oh, okay.
I have some heritage actually in that regard. I'm directly related to people who converted in Denmark and then moved and took most of the family except the two of the siblings in that flock, and then they stayed, and that's where I'm descended from. So I am actually directly related to some LDS people, but that's longer back than like grandparents and all know of. So when I told my grandmother and I figured all this stuff out from genetics testing, they were surprised because they didn't know. So it's like I'm curious about it. I know some of the story about why it happened and like when and why people convert in Denmark. I don't know much about the LDS Church itself and the history of it in the US. I just know sort of my family's part of it. So I'm very curious about that, and since you actually have some background in the LDS Church, I'm thinking you may know a lot more. I'm sure you may know a lot more than I do.
I'm not so sure about the Danish migration in, and I'm a little bit curious
And I'll
about
add that
what year
yeah.
do you know that the people came over?
It happened after Denmark lost a war in about Schleswig-Holstein, which is part of northern Germany, southern Jutland. If you look at a map, may or may not. But the Danish national spirit was basically broken from that war. It was in 1864 that we lost that part of the country.
Okay.
And that meant a bunch of people converted and left. So a lot of people migrated to the U.S. from Denmark in that time, and a lot of people were converted to Mormonism and left. So it was due to that war specifically. We had won this part of the country. We've actually defeated the Germans in 1851, and then in 1864 they came back and destroyed us. Yeah, so that's what happened, and that's why a lot of people left. So you had, I think, Danish nationals are actually the second largest source of Mormons in the U.S. So you have a lot of Danish people specifically, not Scandinavians, but Danish people specifically that actually migrated during that time. So it was sort of the second wave of Mormons was a lot of Danish people. And I know that part of my family did the same. I don't know exactly why. Well, I guess they were converted and then started wanting to go to the religious promised land. So they settled around I think it's around the Wyoming, Colorado, Utah state area that they settled. I've tracked that down so far. So, and I know they had like extreme amounts of children.
Okay.
And that's why I get when I look at my genetic testing thing and I look for just distant relatives, I get a lot of matches in the US. And I'm pretty sure a lot of them are from this. Because I just a few people, like not down to my generation level, but just like 3 generations up. There was one couple that had 17 kids, and most of them had somewhere around 6, 7, 8 kids. And mind you, this was like my ancestors, like, so a couple, and then they had something like 8 kids in Denmark, and 6 of those kids migrated. And each of those 6 kids had like average maybe 8 kids, and then who knows how many the next generation had. So it immediately sprawled into these masses of people that spread across the country here.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that I have a bunch of people I'm related to in the US from the Mormon connection. That's why I'm curious about it, like the LDS Church in the US.
Okay.
Because I actually don't know about that part.
Yeah, that gives me actually quite a bit of context. I mean, I can give you kind of the rough overview. We could dive into it a little bit more. I could do a little bit more detailed research to give you some super specifics. But it does sound like they came over right around the time that Joseph Smith was starting the religion out, writing the first Book of Mormon.
I think it was in around 1880, 1890-ish.
So that would be 1890. That would be quite a bit after his death, actually. People would have already migrated and followed Brigham Young to Zion, which is Salt Lake City. And actually,
that's why I'm saying it was probably second wave Mormonism, like second wave migration.
Yeah, there's actually like the Mormon Church, because the Book of Mormon is the third book in the Bible, so to speak, that was written by Joseph Smith with his golden plates and the whole 9 yards. founded a church. Brigham Young created, like, there was a schism, and he has a different sect of the LDS church that is based in Salt Lake City, as opposed to the one that's based, I believe, in New Jersey, that was Joseph Smith's original church that is still in existence and still protects his gravesite. Then there are fundamentalist LDS people that were part of Brigham Young's group that then went to the outskirts, like into Idaho, and then later down to Mexico after the polygamy laws were put in place in the United States. And then it has slowly adapted.
So is it Brigham Young's LDS that's like in Utah and sort of dominating the Utah landscape? Okay.
Yeah, so Joseph Smith was killed on the East Coast, was made a martyr on the East Coast, and then to flee persecution, all of his followers banded behind like his second and third in command, and a lot of people moved west because originally back then there was a United States border that they crossed, and they went into the wilds of the unclaimed territories and they claimed this new land, and then the United States kind of enveloped them over time, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I think I've heard something about that.
Yeah, and then they passed laws, and then the fundamentalist Mormons that were like, well, the United States came back and they're enforcing their rules on us again. They fled again, and they went to Mexico. And there's actually a huge...
like, they were almost like ready to make a civil war to be their own nation.
Yeah, they had their own military at the time, but the Civil War had occurred, and they were well aware of what happens to people that try to secede from the United States, so they didn't do it. Again, they went down to Mexico, and there's still a huge English-speaking Mormon population. We're talking thousands of people. They're multiple families all living in this one area just south of like New Mexico, Texas area. And they've actually had some conflict with some of the cartels in relatively recent years. But anyway, let's dive into all of this a little bit more in a couple of coming days. I do want to wrap things up and get things sent over to a friend of mine, if you don't mind. Do you want to say goodbye, plug anything to the audience
I'll
before
plug
we
my
go?
own Twitch channel.
Please and thank you.
I've not streamed for a long time, but if you want to give me a follow and are interested in speedruns of very, very obscure PC games, mostly from the 90s, that's what I do. And you can find also links to like my speedrun.com profile and all that there. I might at some point start streaming again and maybe also do some other stuff. I don't know, but we'll see. But thank you for letting me plug my channel.
I really appreciate you being here. Thank you again so much for joining me, for asking a couple of questions and sharing a little bit of yourself. Folks, I want to send you over to my friend Hellfizz Jim. Hellfizz Jim is a really good friend of mine. I've known him for quite a dadgum long time. I haven't ever had this many people to send over to him before, so please give him a warm welcome when you get there. Tell him that I sent you, and I hope you guys all have a wonderful rest of your day. Stay safe out there, take good care of yourselves, and remember, we all love you, folks. Take care. All right. We are officially no longer live.
I see it. Yeah. Cool.
Thank you so much again for being here, for joining me. I have such a hard time getting people willing to come on and share their perspective, and it's so much easier to talk when you have someone to talk to.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, it was interesting to hop on and join in. And I am very curious about all your perspectives, honestly. It intrigues me, all these things. And I don't have a lot of people to talk about like these religious subjects or political subjects or like history subjects in detail. And you seem to also come from a background, well, you've elaborated on that where you know about these things and have traveled the world. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, you've definitely traveled the world yourself as well.
Mostly related to my job, yeah. But
yeah, I've had the luxury of being able to do it because of curiosity, and all of my learning has kind of been because of curiosity, because education is so expensive anymore.
In the U.S. My education was free and with a stipend from the government. So I hope you, at some point, get that in the US. I don't know when that's going to happen or if it's going to happen, but honestly, that works. I'd rather pay more taxes than and then not have student debt. in the country.
My partner is currently working on her PhD, so we have the education kind of going on. Well, I guess she's in a master's PhD double program.
What does she do?
I don't
program?
like to talk too much about her, but she's in
Okay.
mechanical engineering.
Cool.
But yeah, no, she does what she does. She has a lot of fun doing it. She likes academia and the bureaucracy a lot more than I do. She's generated a little bit of student debt, but fortunately we've got some funding for her graduate programs that are making it a little bit easier. But
Yeah.
we need to find a way to get her into the private sector at some point and stop spending money and start making it again.
I don't exactly like the bureaucracy of academia, but I'm in it, and I do it because I want to do research. That's my life goal. So I do it out of necessity.
I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
I need to run. I want to be a part of the
Yeah.
raid that we just sent everything to. But stay in touch. We're both in the Discord now, and if you ever
I'll come
sit,
on another time.
if you ever sit in one of the chats up above, I normally try to pay attention, and I'll come by and say hi. Or if you send me a thing and say, "Hey, what are you doing?" I'd love to chat again.
Cool.
Thank you again, Dr. Entropi. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too. See ya.
Bye now.